Ladies and gentlemen, tonight the day has been occupied by a big controversy. There is a concerted effort by forces within and outside our country to paint a grotesque picture of Bharat. It's no secret that some are possibly not able to digest India's power status in the world today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there's a foreign player who has joined the ecosystem's malign India bandwagon. US billionaire and one of the wealthiest persons in the world with the personal wealth of about $6.7 billion. Approximate, according to my maths, 6 lakh crore rupees worth person, George Soros. He is in the eye of the storm for launching a direct attack on Prime Minister Narendra Modi over the Adani crisis. Revealing his game plan and calling for a change in regime, the billionaire said that he expects a democratic revival in India. He also said at the Munich Security Conference that Prime Minister Modi has been constantly silent on the Adani row and that he will soon have to answer questions from foreign investors in the parliament. Now, almost saying that the Prime Minister will have to answer in the parliament, and the parliament echoing the Adani controversy. Is there a connection? We don't know, but he went on to say that even though India might be a democracy, Modi wasn't a Democrat, and he expects democratic revival in India. Listen to this provocative statement of George Soros.
It's a democracy, but its leader, Narendra Modi, is no Democrat. Inciting violence against Muslims was an important factor in his meteoric rise. India is a member of the Quad, which also includes Australia, the US, and Japan. But it buys a lot of Russian oil at a steep discount. Modi and business tycoon Adani are close allies. Modi is silent on the subject, but he will have to answer questions from foreign investors and in Parliament. This will significantly weaken Modi's stranglehold on India's federal government and open the door to push for much-needed institutional reforms.
Remember, ladies and gentlemen, just a few days ago, the Vice President had warned about how a sinister design is in place to run down India's growth story. But Soros's attempt for Prime Minister Modi is not an overnight development. In 2020, while addressing the World Economic Forum in Davos, Soros had said that Narendra Modi is creating a Hindu nationalist state and that it is the biggest and most frightening setback for India. But there's a sinister pattern or toolkit, I must say, to defame Bharat. International pop star Rihanna fired a tweet in 2021 asking why we aren't talking about farmers' protests in India. Taking a cue from her, environmentalist Greta Thunberg expressed solidarity with the protesting farmers. Malala Yousafzai waded into the hijab debate by fear-mongering. She asserted that Indian leaders must stop the marginalization of Muslim women. Not just this, George Soros has had a checkered history where he's accused of destabilizing several governments in several countries, from Russia to the recent example of Boris Johnson in the UK. The BJP is now splashing Congress's link to Soros in this series. The Vice President of George Soros-funded NGO OSF marched with Rahul Gandhi shoulder to shoulder during the Bharat Jodo Yatra. Salil Shetty can be seen walking beside Rahul Gandhi along with the top brass of the Grand Old Party. This has dented Congress's attempt at distancing itself from Soros's statement. The BJP has called the strike on India as an attempt to demonize democracy. Listen in.
जॉर्ज सोरोस का जो ऐलान हुआ है वो ऐलान आप निश्चित रूप से बारीकी से समझें। वो हमारी डेमोक्रेसी को ध्वस्त करने का ऐलान मात्र इसलिए करते हैं ताकि उनके हैंड पिक्ड लोग सरकार चलाएं। उन्होंने एक फंड का ऐलान किया, $1 बिलियन का, जो वो हिंदुस्तान में और जहां जहां हिंदुस्तान के इंटरेस्ट है वहां पर संचारित करेंगे ताकि हिंदुस्तान को ठेस पहुंचे। मोदी की इमेज पर वार पहली बार नहीं हुआ है। हिंदुस्तान के लोकतांत्रिक ढांचे पर वार का ऐलान उन्होंने पहली बार किया है जॉर्ज सोरोस ने। दिस वॉर इज ट्राइंग टू बी माउंटेड अगेंस्ट इंडिया, एंड व्हाट स्टैंड्स बिटवीन दैट वॉर and our country's interests is Prime Minister Modi.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to the legitimate question on the news hour tonight. Who's trying to sabotage India's democracy? That's the question, and that's the debate. Hashtag Soros strikes India. That's the debate on the other side.
You're watching the News Hour at 9. Debate number 1 on Times Now. Super Prime Time.
Joining the debate tonight, Guru Prakash, national spokesperson of the BJP, Ishkaran Bhandari, advocate Tushar Gupta, senior fellow Swaraj, Karthik Reddy, spokesperson of the BRS, Vivek Silas, spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, Tehseen Poonawala, political analyst, to whom goes my first question. Tehseen Poonawala, strange friends. Strange friends from George Soros's fund working with Rahul Gandhi, and that's the question that is being raised. How come there is so much in common between what the Congress thinks and what George Soros has said today? And George Soros even knows that this issue will be raised in Parliament and the Prime Minister will have to answer there. What's going on?
Good evening, ma'am. Thank you for having me on your show. Good evening to all my fellow panelists and to all your viewers. I don't know who is this George Soros, and I'm sure most of your viewers may or may not have heard of him. But one thing I know for a fact, George Soros is the toolkit agent of the Bharatiya Jhoota Party. Why else? Why else will the Bharatiya Jhoota Party, that did not speak about 2 women being burnt alive, come and do a press conference about some foreigner abroad speaking about democracy in India? When it comes to India, all of us on this panel are united that India comes first, perhaps except the Bharatiya Janata Party, which brought in cash in Parliament along with the left loonies to derail the nuclear deal. But I didn't call them anti-national then, I won't call them anti-national now. But this is a chal of the Bharatiya Janata Party exposing their charitra and their true chehra of trying to put the Congress and opposition in the dock. Otherwise, the most honorable Prime Minister just spoke on your channel, the most powerful man in the universe, has underneath him RBI, SEBI, ED and a serious frauds investigation. George is not going to get cash and bring into India. He will bring it via the SEBI route, via the RBI route, investigate him, arrest him, throw him in jail. Wait, there is a case going on since 2016. What happened? Nothing. They've not even been able to take the case forward because the BJP uses these people only to derail debates and to find an escape route. And this, tell the BJP spokesperson to prove my charge is wrong. It's a challenge.
Guru Prakash, respond. Respond, because Tehseen Poonawala has put you in the dock saying that George Soros is part of your toolkit. He hasn't answered any questions about why Salil Shetty was walking with Mr. Rahul Gandhi at the Bharat Jodo Yatra. Would you want to respond to the charges made by Tehseen?
Thank you so much, Navika. I was patiently listening to my friend from the Congress party, Tehseen. And we have some photographs which you have also been running. Mr. Salil Shetty, Vice President of Open Society Foundation, walking with Mr. Rahul Gandhi. Now, Open Society Foundation is funded by Mr. George Soros. Rajiv Gandhi Foundation, the think tank of Congress Party, the research organization of Congress Party, has HRLN, Human Rights Law Network, as its partner organization, again funded by George Soros. Mr. Rahul Gandhi tweeting, India is no longer a democratic country, which is really laughable because how democratic is the Congress party, which we are all aware of. Mr. Shashi Tharoor, last I know, was a senior leader of the Congress party, met old friend George Soros, upbeat about India and curious about our neighborhood. He's far more than an investor, a concerned world citizen. So who is Mr. Tharoor, who is Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who is Mr. Salil Shetty, and what is Rajiv Gandhi Foundation? I will ask Mr. Tehseen Poonawala, my dear friend, tonight. Apart from this, Navika, we also need to understand 2023 is a very important year, a very significant year. India is leading G20. India is leading the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. On the initiative of Indian Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, International Year of Millets is being celebrated by the United Nations. India has proved it was the pharmacy of the world during the COVID crisis. Be it US President Joe Biden, UK Prime Minister, French President, they have always lauded praise in favor of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. 2014, 2019, all the general elections, we have seen the 1.4 billion people of India strongly standing in support of Mr. Narendra Modi. Who is Mr. George Soros to certify? George Soros का प्रमाण पत्र की आवश्यकता हमें नहीं है. जब देश के दलित, शोषित, वंचित, पीड़ित, कुचले सब श्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी के साथ खड़े हैं. Navika, we need to understand one thing. There is a cohort. There is a cohort of breaking India forces, like you said, within country and outside country. They are deeply elitist. They are deeply feudalistic. They are not able to digest the fact कि गरीब का बेटा आज देश का सबसे ताकतवर प्रधानमंत्री है. उनको ये बात पचती नहीं है कि भारत के इतिहास में पहली बार एक आदिवासी की बेटी राष्ट्रपति बनी है. They want that old India. They are the people with old money. But let me make this very clear on your show tonight. India is going to be governed by the Constitution of India. India is going to be governed by the 1.4 billion people of India. And Mr. George Soros, Open Society, any other organization across the world cannot dictate the terms and conditions for Indian democracy. Mr. Tehseen Poonawala, I ask you clearly, what is the relationship between the Congress Party and Mr. George Soros? ये रिश्ता क्या कहलाता है जब जॉर्ज सोरोस के पैसों से आप यात्रा करते हैं, अपना संगठन चलाते हैं, आपके नेता ट्वीट करते हैं? You have all the answers, Mr. Tehseen Poonawala, being the member
exactly.
of the
and I want to ask you, Rahul Gandhi,
दूध का दूध, पानी का पानी करिए.
One minute. Rahul Gandhi himself has quoted in 2021 a report, We Dem Institute report, where Pakistan and Taliban ruled Afghanistan were above India in academic freedom index. This report was actually put out and sponsored by the funders of Open Society Foundation, which is George Soros' funding organization. अब उसको आप ट्वीट कर रहे हैं, आपके साथ वहां सैर हो रही है, and then you want to say this is the toolkit of the BJP. You know, Tehseen Poonawala, once in a while, you have to make statements that at least people will believe what you're saying.
I will answer both those questions. Yours I'll come to second. He showed one image. ये रिश्ता क्या कहलाता है? ये रिश्ता क्या कहलाता है? Nirav Bhai Modi with Narendra Bhai Modi, and in Prime Minister Modi's house, he's saying Mehul Bhai Choksi. I've circled also Nirav Bhai Modi here. Nirav Bhai Modi with the Prime Minister. तो वही रिश्ता है जो Salil, कोई Salil is walking with Rahul Gandhi. Here तो Nirav Bhai Modi is with Prime Minister Modi. Vijay Bhai Malia का lookout notice change हो जाता है, and Mehul Bhai Choksi is in the official residence of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister addressing him. ये रिश्ता क्या कहलाता है? कहानी घर घर की है. सुनिए सर, I am saying, I am agreeing. Soros, George Soros is funding the Congress. Congress is bad, everything. भैया आप चौकीदार हो ना? The country is in your hands ना? Stop doing press conferences. Act. 2016, did you file a case or no? What happened? High Court, it's waiting. You could not prove anything. Is the money going to come in cash? No, it's going to come via SEBI and RBI. Who's in charge? You're in charge. Please tell us what you have done. If this country you feel is so weak, we don't feel, you feel is so weak that some foreigner sitting in some corner of India can make a statement against my Prime Minister. Modi ji is my Prime Minister. And you feel, my cabinet feels this country so weak, then I feel bad for you. Because my country is strong. I will defend my Prime Minister externally. But I feel bad that you are so weak that you have to attack me to save the Prime Minister. Act against Soros, but you won't because he's your man. And that is the evidence.
Well, Ishkaran Bhandari, sound and fury, very little substance in the arguments made by Mr. Tehseen Poonawala. No answers to any of the questions raised. What's the problem? You know, why can't they explain why are they tweeting, all reports put out by institutions funded by George Soros? Why is Mr. Shashi Tharoor tweeting and meeting, his old friend George Soros? Why is Mr. Rahul Gandhi tweeting all this? Why are people of the Open Society Foundation walking in the Bharat Jodo Yatra? No answers to any of that, but a lot of rhetoric.
First, let me also answer that the action taken on George Soros, because that's very important. George Soros has a funding mechanism which he funds NGOs in India. In 2006, was put on a watch list.
He has no ability to fund directly into India anymore. For that, the action has already been taken. He challenged that action in the High Court. He has not got relief from the High Court. So the government has taken action on his funding processes. Further, the government has also amended the FCRA Act, which was a big debate in this country where every NGO went to court and the Supreme Court held that there is no fundamental right to receive foreign funds, and the government rules are okay on that. So let us first be very clear on the facts of the debate. The action has already been taken on foreign money flowing into NGOs. Now let us come to George Soros. We have been discussing ad nauseum that George Soros has a problem with Hindu nationalistic prime minister. But in his 2-minute speech, and I will not focus on that too much because that is well established. In his 2-minute speech, he also talks about why India is taking oil from Russia. See, the problem was earlier, before becoming ministers, people like Mr. Tharoor were going to him and praising him. Now he has two problems with India. First, India is following its own economic policy, where every Western media has one question to ask: why are you buying the Russian oil, whether it be Europe or be any forum that the foreign minister goes to? And our oil imports have risen from less than 1% to 27%. And Times of India report says 35,000 crore rupees saved by September. By January, it must be 50,000 rupees saved. So George Soros lobby, which is manipulating the market, which is doing short selling, openly doing short selling from Britain to India, it has two problems now. One, you are not doing economic policies which are in his favor. Second, you are a Hindu nationalist government. So what do? They put in their money for regime change, which is what they are trying to do, via paid reports, which are published by the same lobby which will tweet it, go on Facebook, by funding leftist portals, by funding so-called intellectuals whose very reason of existence is to try to change the democratic process in India. And in his last few words, he gives the game away. He says, I think there will be a democratic change. So when Manish Shankar Iyer goes to Pakistan, he wants Pakistan to do a democratic change. George Soros openly says, bring a democratic change. Unfortunately, they will fail. The people of India, including Tehseen, including me, including all of us, by our majority, will decide the Prime Minister of India, and that is what is a functioning democracy.
Well, but the question is, and I want to ask this to Mr. Vivek Silas, जो जॉर्ज सोरोस का दर्द है, मतलब लगभग वही दर्द ऑपोजिशन पार्टीज को भी हो रहा है. प्रवीण चक्रवर्ती राहुल गांधी के बड़े करीबी दोस्त हैं. वो कहते हैं मोदी में डॉज आंसरिंग क्वेश्चंस अबाउट अडानी इन पार्लियामेंट एंड इन इंडिया, बट ही कैन नॉट एस्केप फ्रॉम फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स जॉर्ज सोरोस. आई वांट टू आस्क यू, ये क्या इकोसिस्टम है कि जो भाषा वो बोलते हैं आप भी वही भाषा बोलते हैं? ये कौन सा दर्द है? एंड जॉर्ज सोरोस short seller, he has allegations about debauing the pound sterling, about Bank of England in a few decades ago. The same person now talks about Hindenburg, again a short seller agency, and the same dard comes to the opposition parties. ये कैसा दर्द है? And what kind of medicines are you looking from Mr. George Soros? कौन सा बैंडेड, कौन सी दवाई चाहिए आपको? इतना दर्द क्यों हो रहा है?
Yes, very good evening to you, Navika ji. What Mr. Guru Prakash right now said, that who's George Soros? As you said in your report, that the George Soros is a man of $6.5 billion. He could be a driver of Mr. Adani, who is a man of $140 billion, And what in the last debate when we were debating on the other channel, what Mr. Sushant Sareen said, it's a failure of the central government, definitely. Because what is the FCRA doing? What is the SEBI doing? And what is the RBI doing? How is the money coming down to India? That is the question. Who's there to stop it? It's there for the Home Ministry and the Finance Ministry that is controlled by the central government. And the other report that you showed in your previous show that Mr. Honorable Jagdeep Dhankar, the Vice President of India, said we have to be alert. Ma'am, we don't have to be alert. We have to act. As what Sassin said in 2016, there was a case against him. What happened to the case? Why don't you ban him? How's the funding coming down to India? He could be a toolkit of anyone. He could be a toolkit of Congress. He could be a toolkit of the Bharatiya Janata Party as well. No one knows. Definitely not. The question is not, and people like George Soros don't have the guts to hamper the Indian democracy at any stretch of imagination. India is a strong nation. India is emerging, no doubt. Fine, done. But people like that coming and saying something against our Prime Minister and that we can hamper, we can,
Well, Tushar Gupta, I want to ask you, do you believe these attempts by the opposition to distance themselves from George Soros? You know, they say on record that we have nothing to do with him, government should take action. But pictures say otherwise, connections say otherwise. What's going on?
Good evening, Navika. You know, everyone who was anticipating a foreign hand during the Adani crisis has been validated by the confession of George Soros. Nevertheless, let's connect some dots, Navika. The Congress says that any individual participating in the Bharat Jodo Yatra has no relation to Rahul Gandhi or the Congress party. Let's take it on face value for the sake of argument. But it was Rahul Gandhi in an interview to a Harvard professor who remarked that the Western powers should interfere in India's democratic process because the institutions apparently are sold out, from media to judiciary. We had the Adani crisis, Navika. For a week, the stock price was falling. And what was the opposition of this country doing? They were trying to incite people, selling this lie that the LIC or the SBI might become insolvent because of their exposure to Adani. That retail investor money was at risk. They're attacking the BJP, which honestly feels very odd. You want to fight the BJP on merit? You can. You want to fight them on policy? You can. But to use a crisis to further your political agenda, a crisis that has a foreign hand, it's being validated now. That doesn't sound right, Navika.
Well, so let me ask Mr. Karthik Reddy. Karthik Reddy, the fact of the matter is concerns being raised on whatever, comes to the mind of the opposition, asking questions, absolutely within your right. But should the opposition fall into a trap? And the trap today that has been exposed by the words of Mr. George Soros. It's a limited question I'm asking. Because the kind of concern that opposition parties picked up and just ran with it, instead of bringing some sanity to the markets, actually made more wealth of Indian investors go down the drain, didn't believe any institution in India. And today, somehow the language of George Soros and the questions and concerns of the opposition almost sound, similar. I want to ask you, Karthik Reddy, are we playing into a trap or into somebody's hands or some agenda that is clearly wanting to keep India down?
Hello, Navika ji.
Good evening.
Let me
sir.
tell you that we are not that gullible and naive. We Indians have come a long way and we are smart enough. We have seen enough of the world to realize the world is not our friend. At the onset, let me use your channel to congratulate our Honorable Chief Minister. Today is happy birthday, so through your channel I want to wish him well and all the health. Navika ji, if you want to call it a trap, what George Soros has said, let's divide it into two parts. First part, any individual, any institution, any company of foreign origin has no business to say or to get involved in Indian polity, its internal matters, in our politics, with our Prime Minister. This is our doing, this is our own headache, this is our internal matter. No foreigner has any business to say anything regarding our internal matters. And everything said and done, Navika, in the last few times I was on your channel, I kind of hinted that the whole world is looking at us. We are becoming a butt of jokes. The whole world is trying to gauge us on the lines of Adani. Navika ji, the trap that you are talking about, that George Soros today mentioned Adani, but let me tell you, this is not the first time or the first week that we as opposition were talking about Adani. From the time Modi ji has become the Prime Minister, the opposition has been crying about Adani, about his meteoric rise in his wealth, his involvement in a number of businesses in India. This is not new. This is not a trap that anybody has set for us to fall. Adani is hand in glove with Modi, and that is what we have always been saying. And now if I say this, there are certain friends from the BJP who says, now look, the Supreme Court has taken cognizance. Navika ji, the Supreme Court is not run by the Prime Minister. All the institutes are right now mute. I don't know when the Prime Minister will come out and speak about Adani in the Parliament, in the press meet. Not only India, Navika ji, the whole world is waiting right now.
Guru Prakash, the buck again comes back to the government's doorstep, that cases going on against NGOs related to George Soros, no progress has been made, and all regulating institutions are under the government. Why are they not doing something? If you know there is a foreign conspiracy that's going on to destabilize India, what's the government doing?
Navika ji, we must understand a couple of things first. A lot of my friends from different political parties, and it has now sort of become a rhetoric on attacking the institutional integrity. We have judiciary, we have executive, we have legislature. The problem is that when any institution goes against your will, आप election हार जाते हैं, Election Commission of India खराब है. There is a judgment against you in the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court is compromised. This mindset is not going to work. Our Election Commission of India is an independent, autonomous constitutional body. It has MOU with United Nations as well. It has credibility across the world. Supreme Court, you have time and again raised question. Now, Navika ji, coming to your question, that what have we done? Mr. Harsh Mandar, the raid on his campus. Now, who is Mr. Harsh Mandar? Ex-member of the National Advisory Council. Now, what was National Advisory Council? It was the government main agency, the topmost decision-making body during the UPA government. Now, the purported link between Mr. Harsh Mandar and George Soros is everybody to establish. You look at the point of contention by Mr. George Soros. He did not like the CEA. He did not like the abrogation of Article 370. George Soros, his institution, his organization is clearly in cahoots with the Congress party. Why is there such ideological promiscuity between the two of them? Article 370 George Soros ko bhi chahiye.
So
Article 370.
I understand that. I understand that, Mr. Guru Prakash, but why is the government not acting? Why is the government not acting? What were you waiting for?
Yes.
Navika, we must understand that the government has initiated action. The Supreme Court has
also
initiated action. We don't need to give our every answer on this show. But we have to understand the international conspiracy, the international stakeholders, the international Breaking India Brigade must also be exposed here. And their clear-cut link with the Congress party as well. The same Congress party, they say, हमने आजादी की लड़ाई लड़ी थी. जिनके खिलाफ, जिनके आपने आजादी की लड़ाई लड़ी थी, उनके साथ आप गठबंधन कर रहे हैं. You are making an alliance with the same forces.
Respond, Tehseen Poonawalla, and let me also raise two other questions. Let me ask you: have there not been close links between George Soros's, foundation and the work that they do, and a former Congress Prime Minister of this country? And US media watchdog, the Media Research Center, has also stated that George Soros and his companies enjoy a lot of good relations with media companies, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, etc., etc. The same media outlets which regularly try and bring down the government or write against the government in India.
So two aspects to this. Number one, which political party, quiz for your viewers, retrospectively amended the FEMA and FCRA laws so that Chanda can come into them? the Bharatiya Janata Party.
And ask the late Motilal Vora, who went and made that request. Of course, you know, it's a dubious decision taken.
It was, right?
But,
who was the Prime
but
Minister?
the fingers in the pie, the fingers in the pie, fingers in the pie were the Congress and the BJP both.
Okay. I am saying the Congress is bad.
So don't say half-truths.
I'm not saying half-truths, but allow me to speak. I am saying the Congress is bad. It's misread, it's misruled this country, everything. But because Congress is bad, the current most honorable Prime Minister retrospectively amends the rules so that Chanda can come into his political party. वाह भाई वाह, ये रिश्ता क्या कहलाता है? दूध का दूध पानी का पानी हो जाए और इलेक्टोरल बॉन्ड से किसके पास पैसे आते हैं? छोड़िए इन बातों को, इससे दिक्कत होगी. Let's come to the more substantive issues. Tushar raised a very important point. He said Rahul Gandhi asked for foreign interference. Tushar, Rahul Gandhi said, and I quote, India and USA should combine forces to promote human freedom, democracy and rule of people. How is this bad? I think why India and US works is because we are tolerant systems. You find this bad? The same government that pats itself on the back for one Philip Kotler award that it gets somewhere in here, I'm again saying we don't want interference in our country.
Tushar Gupta, selective quoting.
But acting those who are hurting our country, why are they not acting? That's the question.
Selective quoting by Tehseen Poonawala, Tushar.
Navika, you know, I admire the opposition of this country, especially the Congress, that have been raising their concerns against the Adani enterprises since 2014, since Modi took over. And at the same time, having their state governments allow projects by the Adani enterprises, one of them being the biggest solar park in the country in Rajasthan. Yeah. Along with Mamata Banerjee and other allies of the opposition hosting Adani regularly. Yeah. Nevertheless, it's one of those evenings, Navika, where I want to give Congress all the benefit of doubt. Today, George Soros made a remark about India. It was about Modi, but it was also about India. माना कांग्रेस की सरकार नहीं है, कांग्रेस का देश तो है. बीजेपी ने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करी. What was stopping the Congress from doing a press conference, coming out and saying that we disagree, we discard the remarks made by a foreign individual which are against Indian interest. While we fight the BJP on policy merit, we would not be audience to such remarks by a foreign individual.
Well put by Tushar Gupta.
Engineering economic and political
They just
tools.
merely put out. They put out a tweet.
Jairam, Pawan did it, and I'm telling you, Jairam Ramesh did it, Pawan Khera did it. He said we don't agree with this, but I am still saying
they put out a tweet, not a press conference. But the fact of the matter is, there is an uncanny similarity that comes. I'm running out of time, Tushar. Uncanny similarity between what George Soros has said and what has been raised by several within India. Now, what are the connections is for the government to find out. And what action will it take? Well, we'll wait and watch. Thank you very much to my guests joining me on debate number 1. On the other side,